Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this milestone 25th anniversary Miami Jewish Film Festival, which is the world's largest film festival of its kind. So we want to thank all of our members, our sponsors, our community members as well, and you, the film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, for their continued support throughout the years. My name is Danny Reed. I'm the Director of Cultural Arts and Adult Programs at the Miami Beach Jewish Community Center, and I want to welcome you here tonight. We're here to have a virtual conversation with two very special guests, the creators of a powerful and emotional documentary about that took place towards the end of World War II, and that they also have a personal connection to. So I do want to welcome, let me see if I get their names right, Hans Hochstöger, right? Close enough. Who is the director of the film, and his brother, who helped with editing and research and production, Tobias Hochstöger. So thank you, gentlemen. I do appreciate it. I'm going to stick with your first names for the rest of this, if you don't mind. But welcome, gentlemen. So before we begin, why don't we start this way? If you can just tell us a little bit about your professional backgrounds, and then we'll go from there, so the audience knows who they're dealing with. Hans, why don't we start with you first?
Yes, thank you. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to show Endphase at the Miami Jewish Film Festival. It's a big honor for us, and yeah, I feel very curious to the reactions of the people who see the film in the USA about this story from Austria, from a little village in Austria. So about my background, I'm a photographer by trade. I worked the last years for magazines and newspapers in Austria and Germany. And about 6 years ago, we started working on the film. So with Tobias. Tobias is a political scientist and did the research for the film. Yeah, and initially it was planned to be a photo project. And over the years, or actually quite fast, it was clear that it wouldn't work as a photo project, because there were so many stories and so many layers of stories and people that we found that we decided to make a film out of it. Yeah.
Tobias, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thank you as well for having me as a guest here tonight with Hans. As he said, it's a big honor, and I'm also very curious on the reactions from the audience. To give a little introduction of myself, so I'm a political scientist by training, and because of that, I did the research for the film. So I wrote my thesis in political science on the massacre of Hof am Brill. And right now I'm here based in Berlin, and I work as a journalist for documentary film production. Yeah, so that's my sort of a background.
So thank you, gentlemen. So I think that we should also begin with the obvious, that you grew up in this village. Is that correct?
Yes.
So can you tell us how you first heard of this story, of this massacre?
Well, I will start because I'm a little older than Tobias. So I don't remember when I first heard it, because we used to live, when I was a little boy, we used to live quite close to the place that it happened. And I remember that it was somehow always there. So I think somebody must have told us quite early that something happened in those in those hills there. I remember that when I was 15, we tried to find the memorial stone. It was erected in 93, and that must have been around 98 probably. And we didn't find the stone because it was hidden away in a curve on the street. And even as people living there, it was difficult to find that stone. Sorry, my cough is really bad. It used to be better. I think it's a story that is quite present in the village, but I also think that many people don't know the details. They know that some Jewish people, or maybe even they don't know that it was Jewish people. They just know that some forced laborers were murdered there. But during our research, a lot of people didn't know the scale of the massacre. It was 228 people, and a lot think that it was 5 or 10 people who were murdered there. So yeah, I think the massacre is, a lot of people know about the story, but very, very little actually know the details about what happened there. Yeah.
So Tobias, when you started to when you and your brother decided to make this this documentary, that this required a larger focus, and you started the research, when you started the film and started the research, did you start with the intent of trying to find the perpetrators?
I think that the first or the initial target was to find the perpetrators, right? Because it was this big unknown thing. As Hans said, like it was known among some people, especially the older ones, but like people from my generation, I'm 28 years old now, they never really heard of it, right? Very few. So it was this. I think the first intention we had was really to find the murderers, because there were also these rumors that people from our village were involved. And another factor was that there hasn't been done a lot of research, or basically no real research. Like there is one book chapter by an Austrian historian in a book from, I think, dating back to 2006 or something, and this was this chapter, 15 pages long or something, was the first scientific work really done on it. Yeah. Same for any press coverage. There has been some in the 1940s and 50s after the war, but then there was almost 40 years like a silence. And the few people we met who were dealing with the massacre or trying to find out more about it, they really had problems to kind of break into this small village community in rural Austria, because they were all from outside. They were academics from Vienna, students from Germany or something. So kind of foreign people to this small homogeneous village community. And for us, this wasn't really a problem, because our grandparents lived there, our parents, we grew up there. So for us, it was much more easier to approach the people and to just ask them, like, very frankly and straightforward. So can you tell me something about the massacre, or what happened in the last days of World War II? What did you experience, and so on and so on. But I think during our research, and the basic research took like 4 years, or even a bit longer, I think and you can see that very well in the film, our focus shifted more from the question of the perpetrators to the victims, and to the families of the victims, to the descendants, right? Because
Right.
yeah, because it was very difficult to really find the actual perpetrators, and we thought also maybe it's much more worth, especially after we found out about certain families and names and victims, to give more space to those people than make a whole film just about the perpetrators.
Right.
I also think it would have been a film about you can only speak with the children of the perpetrators, because they are all dead for a long time. So and I think it's a big question what to ask those children, because often they don't know about the stories of their parents, or they feel ashamed or don't. So I find that question quite difficult, how to make a film about the perpetrators without actually having somebody responsible in the film, because that would maybe be interesting.
Right. Well, you know, it's interesting that in the course of the film, it's revealed that the local, I guess, police captain, I can't recall his name. Pardon?
Winkler,
right?
Yes.
So he did attempt to bring this massacre to light, even submitting to the authorities evidence and trying to bring the people to justice. So I find that very, very interesting. Was he from the village or from the area as well?
No, he was also an outsider.
He was.
I think a year before the massacre, and he stayed probably, but I think Tobias knows it better than me. I think he didn't stay. Sorry, he didn't stay too long in the village. He stayed probably 2 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well. And go ahead.
Yeah, he was a really courageous man, because he started his investigation during a time when the Nazis were still in power, and he really questioned. He collected testimonies. He tried to find all the people who who saw something, and I think that was so he could have been under a huge personal danger too.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he's a real hero, I think. I'm curious, did anybody during the time that you were making this and filming in the village, and you know, were there any villagers or anybody that didn't approve or wanted you to stop, or made an issue of you bringing this to light that had that cast a bad light on the village?
To be true, I was worried in the beginning, but the first thing that almost all the old people that we interviewed for the film, they opened up and were really helpful, and a lot of people also approached us. They said, "Oh, my grandmother knows something about," or she grew up in the village. There were actually, when during the first lockdown, I did a lot of the last filming so I did a lot, landscapes and stuff like that. And I was I was approached 2 times by people in the village who asked me why we are doing this, and why we can't. There should be silence about the massacre. People should talk about it. But that was really just 2 times. Actually, I think, I think that my bigger fear is that people just won't talk about it, so that the film maybe in the region won't have the impact that we hope it has, or it will have.
Right. You know, I you mentioned the shots that you did of the landscape, and that's one of the things that that impacted me greatly about your film is that, and I don't know if there were so many shots of the countryside and how beautiful it is and how peaceful it is. At the same time, you're getting to the roots of this story of how the massacre happened. Was that by design that you wanted to do that?
Actually, yes, because the massacre happened at the beginning of May, and it's for me it was really difficult to comprehend that because it really is a beautiful place, and it's actually in May you have everything starts to bloom, and it's the beginning of summer in Austria, and I can't imagine that something like this massacre happens at such a place. It's so surreal that you it's for me it was really difficult to imagine something as bad as this massacre happening in that landscape.
And well, I can tell you that it really does, add to the film. Just and does make you ask those questions as the viewer. It makes you ask those questions as well. Tobias, I wanted to ask you in the process of helping your brother, do the research and prepare for the film with all the information. Were there any difficulties in finding out, going into the archives, finding out this information? Did you hit any stumbling blocks, as they say?
I think like when you take the research on which the film is based, there are two main pillars. One is all the stuff from the archives, like the code files and so on and so on. And the other pillar is the more lively thing, which I think is very good, visible in the film, like the interviews with Jakob Schwarz and those things. And when we began our research, the first step took me into a big archive in Vienna, where the code files of the massacres are stored. And I mean, the thing is, that there was never a trial or anything, so it's just like a small, I don't know, maybe 60-70 pages, right? So something you go through in one day or something, or maybe 2 days when you read it, and this is the main. This is you can say in this document the main details about who was involved or who might have been involved, what time did it happen. So all these basic details you will all find in this document, and this document is heavily based on Winkler's courage, right? As you spoke before. So thank God that this file is existing, because otherwise we or any other scientist couldn't have continued this work somehow. And the next step, so in the very first step, it was like very abstract, you can say. It was like just these code files, but there was no, because all the people, all the witnesses, they all had died already, passed away decades ago. So you had just one or two persons also from our village that would really be able to really give you substantial information, right? And so the next thing was then we collected a lot of pictures from the camp and so on to get a more lively image what really happened then, how the place even looked like, because the village has changed a lot in the past 70 years. And with the research going on and on, I think the most important part was then to get all those living witnesses like Jakob Schwarz, the Klein brothers, and this kind of enabled us to also make it broader, because with the court files alone, I'm not really sure if we could have done like a real feature-length movie, you know.
Right.
Yeah, so I think this was really an essential part, to find any people who have kind of an attachment to it, and also can tell you something interesting about it, something new, right?
So what was that experience like, filming and meeting the survivors of the massacre and their family members? Were they welcome? Did they welcome this opportunity to speak with you?
Yes. How was it like? It was, I think, always very emotional. I remember when we first met Jakob Schwarz, he invited a friend of him as a translator, and then we saw that he spoke German quite well.
Yeah.
And that was actually a big surprise for us, because he wrote us a letter of invitation in German, but we didn't know that he still spoke it that well. Mm-hmm. And so then we decided to make the interview in German. And during that first interview, also his son, who can be seen in the movie a few times, he was present. And then Jakob Schwarz told us that a lot of those things that he would tell us in that interview, that his son didn't know about many of those things. And so he really opened up to completely to two guys that he had never seen before. And then even his wife told us that he spoke about a few things that he never even mentioned to her. So that was quite, yeah, I think as filmmakers, we are really, really thankful to those people that they let us be part of their stories. And I think especially for people of their age, they were all in their 80s and 90s even. It's, if you speak about those very bad things, you go back into that time, and I think it was a big present for us, just that they made the effort and speak about it, because for example, C.F. Klein, he was very hesitant at first. He didn't want to speak about the massacre, and he didn't feel very well. He was 94 years old, I think, at the time of the interview, and he actually died, I think, a month later. But still, he made the effort and welcomed us to his home and prepared the photos and invited his daughter. So they all, I had the feeling that they all had somehow also maybe the need to speak about the massacre and about their family members as a way of coping. Or I think you can't cope with something like that massacre, but as a, maybe as you mentioned in the beginning, that the survivors that you have in your community, that they all don't know what will happen with their memories once they are gone. So maybe it was also a way for them to preserve the memory on their family members who got murdered.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I see that the footage of Zev Klein visiting the gravesite, the mass gravesite, was something that was filmed a few years ago by his
Yes.
grandson. Is that correct?
Mhm.
And they gave that to you. So
Yes.
that offered a very nice poignancy and to the film too, knowing that that people are visiting the gravesite and remembering it. So there was also was Shorts that was hidden when he was called Tibor. Is that correct? He was hidden by a local family
Yes.
after the massacre.
Mhm.
So you were able to connect with that family that hid him.
Yes, actually, that was I think it was our first interview.
Mhm.
And we didn't know that. We knew that family because they lived quite close to us, and our mother knew the woman who is in the film, Mrs. Eder, who was the daughter of the farmer who was hiding Jakob Schwarz. And a few years ago, a book came out, and it told the story of the massacre as a crime novel. So it had a lot of how do you say, of fiction in it, but also some of the names. And there was written that one family in Hof am Bril was hiding a Jewish boy, and then we found out that we know that family, and we called her son, and he was actually quite open to speak about when his grandfather was hiding Jakob Schwarz. But I also know that they didn't speak about that for decades, I think. So very little people knew that in Hof am Bril one family was hiding that Jewish boy.
When I'm just curious, as we conclude, for both of you, what in the whole process of deciding to make the film and doing the research and then the filming, was there any one, for either of you, was there any one story or interview or point that that affected you the most of what somebody told you, or evidence that you found? Which interview affected you the most?
Well, I think for me, it's definitely Jakob Schwarz's story. And especially during editing, I heard his interview so many times, and I still get very emotional when I think about that moment of the little boy stepping out of the barracks in the morning, and still not knowing that his mother got murdered, and asking people if they saw the Jewish laborers somewhere. And just thinking of the 10-year-old boy at 5 in the morning in the rain, and thinking of my own children. I have a 4-year-old daughter and a little baby. It just it almost gives me tears just to imagine a child having to go through something like that. It's
Thank you. Tobias, what about you?
Probably also the interview with Jakob Schwarz, but to mention another interview as well. For example, the passage with Georgi Roth was always something which was very touching for me, because I remember when we went to Budapest for the first time to go to the belongings of the victims, there was always this small picture of a like a 8 or 9-year-old boy, and it's a very lovely, cute picture. And I always was very sad when I watched it, because I always thought like he was killed there, right? This little boy was murdered in Hof am Bril, until we found out that he was still alive, or that he wasn't there at the time, and that he survived the war. And which makes him such an interesting figure, I think, is like that you have this whole controversy in his
Right.
stories. Like you have this young broken man with 19 years that is together with his uncle, the sole survivor of the war from his whole family, his family, his sisters, his parents, everyone got murdered. And then you have these other thing like that he at least he said like on video that he killed 2 of those German soldiers, and it's very interesting, like these psychological aspects and the philosophical question behind like does it justify it or not? How would you act? Or you know, it's yeah, that's something that was haunting me quite a while. These questions and the story of Kierkegaard.
Right. And he told the story so you know, in English we say matter of fact, like simple, like this is what happened, this is what I did to them, you know. And it's hard for us who were not there, who didn't go through what they went through, to pass judgment as well. So let me ask you, what where else has the movie been screened, and what plans do you have for Endphase? And well, actually, before that, I should ask you, why did you choose that name? Why Endphase? How did you come about that title?
There are 2 reasons. One is that that those massacres who happened towards the end of the war, in German they are called Endphase Verbrechen, like the last phase of the war, and that was one reason to pick that term that historians use. And the second reason was that there are so many people in the film who are obviously in the last phase of their lives and are opening up. So that were the 2 reasons for the title.
Yeah, those are great reasons. I'm just curious now, in your research, did you find out if this was the last mass killing of Jews in the war? Or because it was, what, 5 days before the war ended? Something like that? 6 days before the war officially ended?
It was in Austria, but correct me, Tobias, I think it was 5 days before the war.
5 days, yeah.
So in Austria, I didn't find any such massacre that happened after Hof-am-Brill, at least on this large scale. So maybe some small things were happening, or like but really like a massacre were several dozens of people got murdered. In Austria, it was definitely the last one, and I'm not so sure about Germany, but I think even in Germany there were not really massacres on such a scale at this time.
I know. So to conclude, I'd like to ask you where have you screened Endphase, and what are your plans for it to screen it in other places? Has it been released in Austria?
It will be released in December, if COVID allows. Yeah, but the next plan, it will be released in cinemas in December. So that's yeah, actually really great. It will be shown in about 10 or 15 cinemas in Vienna and in the region around. Probably it will be shown on TV later this year, next year. Yeah, it was shown at a few festivals. It was shown at Crossing Europe Festival in Austria. It was shown at the Jewish Film Festival in Berlin. and yeah,
what was the reaction to the film at those film festivals?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people who are interested in the topic go there, so they are yeah, I think a lot of the people didn't know about the massacre in the first place, and were quite shocked about what happened and how, yeah. And I think a lot of the people were, like, one aspect of the film is, I think it's one of the, or probably one of the last films that will be made with the survivors as protagonists. And yeah, that was definitely one aspect that a lot of the viewers liked a lot.
Right. No, it's true. It's true. And as we said before, we started taping that, you know, the survivors, as you said, the survivors want to tell their stories. So this was what you and your brother made was, I think, an excellent record of what happened, and it's going to become part of the canon of the stories, of some of the untold stories of the Holocaust and the end of the war.